There comes a moment silent, almost sacred, when the veil lifts. You realize that what you thought was love was control, what felt like affection was exploitation, and what appeared as strength in the other was in fact a mask hiding deep inner weakness. The narcissist, sensing your growing clarity, your inner power, your detachment, they panic, not because they love you, but because they are losing the grip they mistook for connection. In that moment of awakening, they attempt one last trick, one final distortion of truth, one last desperate performance. This is not about you falling for it again. This is about you understanding the psychology behind it, so you never do. This speech is not merely about manipulation. It's about individuation, your return to self. If you've ever been in the presence of someone who drains your spirit yet craves your light, I urge you listen to this to the end, because the final trick of the narcissist is the most dangerous of all. And the moment you see through it, you become free. They don't fear your anger. They don't fear your silence. What they fear is your awareness, because once you become aware, you can no longer be controlled. You see, a narcissist does not enter your life by force. They come in quietly, often wrapped in charm, attentiveness, or even vulnerability. They study you not to know you, but to exploit the very places where love, trust, and empathy live inside you. But the moment you begin to grow emotionally, spiritually, psychologically, they notice. And that growth, that is what terrifies them. They were never in love with you asterisk. They were in love with your need for them. Your dependence was their oxygen. Your self-doubt their foundation. So the moment you start standing tall, the moment your voice returns, the moment your eyes no longer search for their approval, they feel it like a wound. They may not say it out loud, but internally panic sets in, because they know they are losing the one thing they valued, the ability to define your reality. Narcissists don't survive on truth. They survive on confusion. Your strength begins to untangle the confusion they've spent so much time weaving around you. It unravels their narrative, and that is the real threat, not your words, not your anger, but the clarity with which you begin to see them. That clarity is a mirror they cannot look into without seeing their own emptiness, so they will fight it, and not in obvious ways. They won't yell at first or argue. They'll test, they'll poke, they'll disguise manipulation as concern. You've changed, they'll say, you're not the same person, and they're right, you're not, you're stronger now. And to them, that's a danger. They may suddenly become distant, hoping to spark the old panic in you. The fear of abandonment they once used to keep you tethered, but when you no longer chase, when you no longer react, something shifts in them. They realize the spell is breaking, and that is when their tactics turn darker. A narcissist's power was never rooted in love. It was rooted in control masked as love. And when control slips, they regress. But it's not a regression you'll see with empathy. It's a strategic collapse of their identity. They will project, deflect, accuse, anything to re-enter your psychological space, because your autonomy feels like a betrayal to them. And here lies the paradox. The stronger you become, the weaker they feel, because your strength illuminates their falseness. They cannot stand your transformation because it reminds them of everything they are not. Your peace reminds them of their chaos, your clarity of their delusion, your authenticity of their performance. And so they will test your foundation again. They may suddenly become generous, apologetic. They may use others to plant seeds of doubt in your mind. They may pretend to mirror your growth, speaking your language just enough to sound convincing. But do not be fooled. This is not connection, it is desperation. You must understand that your strength threatens the narcissist not because you have power over them, but because you no longer need them. You've stepped outside of the emotional economy they depended on. No more bargaining, no more walking on eggshells, no more sacrificing your essence for temporary peace. That self-abandonment they relied on, you've closed the door on it. And now they are faced with someone they cannot influence. That is their greatest fear, irrelevance. This stage of awakening is often where people falter, not because they are weak, but because the narcissist becomes unpredictable. You may find them unusually quiet, or love-bombing again, or making promises they have no intention of keeping. It's not because they've changed, it's because they believe you might still be susceptible to illusion. They're gambling on your old wounds being unhealed. They're testing the soil for cracks. But your task is to hold the line not with anger, but with inner stillness. Because it's not about winning an argument, it's about maintaining your center. This phase isn't easy. You'll feel doubt. You'll remember the good times. You'll be tempted to question yourself, because narcissists are skilled at rewriting history. But remember this, if they truly respected you, your strength would not offend them, it would inspire them. The fact that it scares them tells you everything. When a narcissist senses your independence, they will try to recast the relationship into something you'll recognize again, something familiar. Familiarity is their leverage. They'll try to recreate the chaos you once confused for passion, or the distance you once interpreted as mystery. But now you see, and once you see, you cannot unsee. This moment of clarity is not about them, it's about you. It's about reclaiming your perception, your instincts, your worth. They fear your strength because your strength makes them transparent. The mask no longer works, the narrative no longer fits, and that's when they realize their role in your story is over. They may not disappear. In fact, they may try harder than ever, but the power they once held is gone. Because power is not taken, it is given, and you have stopped giving it. That is liberation. That is the quiet revolution they never expected. And that is why they fear you. There is something deeply deceptive about the narcissist's final attempt to regain control. It doesn't come dressed in rage or threat. It arrives quietly, almost beautifully disguised as vulnerability. It's not the monster at the door that fools you. It's the trembling voice, the tear-filled eyes, the apparent regret. This is their last, dirtiest trick. The performance of transformation, the imitation of change. It is not an apology, it is a strategy. When the narcissist sees that your strength is no longer just a phase, when they can no longer provoke you, confuse you, or lure you into their web, they pull out what I call the desperation mirror. They don't just chase you, they start becoming you. They begin reflecting your growth, your language, your values. They say the words you've always longed to hear, but these words don't come from the soul, they come from a place of calculation. Their goal is no longer dominance, but survival. You see, the narcissist doesn't know how to connect. They only know how to perform. When you begin to live in truth, they adapt not by growing, but by mimicking what you've become. You'll notice their tone changes. They suddenly speak of healing, of wanting to rebuild. They echo your insight, even your spirituality. They might tell you they've seen the light, that they've changed, that they understand now, and a part of you wants to believe it. Not because you are naive, but because you are compassionate. That compassion is what they are gambling on. But do not mistake performance for transformation. True change requires inner confrontation, deep humility, and the willingness to be shattered by one's own truth. The The narcissist is incapable of this. What they seek is not growth, it's re-entry. They want access, not accountability. So they will offer a newer, gentler mask, not because they want to become real, but because the real you now demands it. It's an adaptation, not an evolution. They know you are awakening. They know you are beginning to trust yourself. That is the crisis. So their last resort is to lower their defenses and convince you they are no longer a threat. They will appear wounded, misunderstood. They might tell you about their trauma, their pain, how much they miss the connection. They'll even say they admire your strength now. And for a moment you might feel seen, but this is not seeing. This is scanning. They are watching you, collecting emotional data, looking for the right combination of words and gestures that will reactivate the old bond. The bond that kept you entangled. They're not appealing to your intellect, they're appealing to your heart. Because the heart is where they once had power, this is the moment when many fall back into the trap. Not because they're weak, but because the final trick is designed to bypass logic and speak directly to old longing. The longing to be understood, to be loved, to be met. And for a split second, the narcissist wears that illusion like a second skin. They become who you always wished they were, but it's not real, it's bait. The most painful part is this: they know it's not real. They know they haven't changed. They know they're just echoing your light to draw you back into the dark. But in their world, connection is control, and losing control means emotional death. So they stage this final act like a playwright desperate to keep the curtain from closing. They use everything they've learned about you against you, your empathy, your hope, your patience, your depth. This is why I say it is the dirtiest trick of all, because it plays on your goodness, it plays on your healing. And that's what makes it so hard to see for what it is. You want to believe people can change. You want to believe love can redeem. But here's the truth. If the change does not come when they hold power, if it only comes when they are losing you, then it is not change. It is strategy. Watch closely in these moments. Look beyond the words. Look at the pattern. Are they consistent? Or are they only different when you threaten to walk away? Are they taking responsibility or just avoiding consequences? Are they facing themselves or just flattering you? What makes this so dangerous is that it often comes when you are almost free. When your mind is clear, your emotions stable, your energy reclaimed. That is when the narcissist stages this final attempt. Because they know once you are fully detached, there is no path back in. So they create the illusion that they've finally arrived, emotionally, spiritually, psychologically. But they haven't. They've simply arrived at a place of desperation, and desperation knows how to act. True transformation is quiet, unannounced. It doesn't seek applause. It doesn't need to prove anything. But the narcissist's version of change is loud, dramatic, and performative. They want you to see it, to validate it, to reward it. They want your emotional investment again, and once they have it, the mask will eventually fall, and the cycle begins again. This is the final test, not of them, but of you. Can you see through the illusion, even when it's wrapped in everything you once wished for? Can you love yourself enough to walk away, not from cruelty, but from manipulation disguised as redemption? Can you trust your growth even when someone suddenly wants to match it? The answer must be yes, because if it's not, you risk returning to a performance. You risk abandoning the very self you worked so hard to reclaim. The narcissist cannot walk with you into your healing. They can only follow until they are noticed, and once they are noticed, the game changes. Don't let the final trick pull you back. You are not being offered love, you are being offered a fantasy that ends the moment you hand back your power. And this time you won't. There's a moment, often subtle, when the narcissist realizes strength won't work. Not their strength, and not the strength you've begun to build in yourself. It's a moment of pivot for them, a shift from dominance to something even more dangerous, emotional manipulation through empathy. Because if they can't overpower you, they will aim for something far deeper, your compassion. That's when they begin using your emotional core against you. And most people don't see it until they're already entangled in it. You see, narcissists do not operate with depth, but they are excellent readers of emotional depth in others. They identify the exact areas where your humanity lives, where your longing, your guilt, your forgiveness, and your loyalty reside. These are not flaws. These are your most beautiful traits, but to a narcissist they are keys. Keys to a door they no longer have access to since you started closing it. So they will knock again, not loudly but softly, with words that sound like sorrow, with gestures that echo remorse, not because they feel anything genuine, but because they no asterisk you do. They don't manipulate with facts. They manipulate with feelings. They will bring up shared memories selectively, the ones where you were happy, when things felt whole, when it seemed like they truly saw you. These are curated, rehearsed recollections, and they are meant to do one thing: destabilize your certainty. You might hear them say, "Remember when we laughed for hours that night?" or "No one ever understood me the way you did." These aren't expressions of appreciation. They are reactivations. The goal is to reignite the emotional bond you've been slowly dismantling, and if that doesn't work, they reach deeper. They will remind you of their pain, real or fabricated. They may say, "You know what I've been through," or "I never had anyone else who stayed like you did." What they're doing is reaching for the part of you that always wanted to heal others. That part of you that saw beyond the mask, that hoped the hurt behind their cruelty might one day be healed by love. They use your empathy like a scalpel, slicing into your resolve with every appeal to your compassion. And it works if you don't see it for what it is. At this stage, logic will not protect you. You may know intellectually that they're playing games. But if they trigger your emotional reflexes, your guilt, your sadness, your hope, it's easy to slip, to fall back into the old belief. Maybe they just need more love. Maybe they are finally being vulnerable. Maybe they're hurting and you're walking away too soon. But here's the truth. Vulnerability without accountability is just another form of control. When someone uses their suffering as a leash, it's not healing. It's bondage. True vulnerability leads to change. But narcissists don't change. They just shift tactics. They say just enough to make you pause, to make you question your clarity, to pull you into a loop of inner conflict where their voice starts to sound like your conscience. And before you know it, you're not living in truth anymore. You're living in their emotion-based reality. They may even present themselves as victims of your boundaries. They'll say you've become cold, distant, unforgiving. They'll flip the narrative so subtly that you start to doubt the strength you've worked so hard to build. They say things like, "You just gave up on us," or "I guess I was never enough for you." They act as though your healing is the wound, as though your refusal to suffer with them is a betrayal. And if you still carry even a sliver of unresolved guilt or attachment, this is where the manipulation hits hardest. And then comes the most deceptive layer. They begin to suffer visibly they let you see them fall apart. Not completely, but just enough to make you feel responsible. They may isolate themselves, cry, go silent, or even involve others, telling mutual friends or family how devastated they are. This is not healing, it's weaponized despair. They hope you'll feel bad enough to lower your guard, that you'll begin to feel guilty for protecting yourself . And once that happens, the door reopens, and they are back inside, not because they changed, but because your empathy allowed it. The cruelty of it all is that they never play fair. They don't attack your weaknesses anymore. They use your strengths. Your kindness, your loyalty, your softness. They push you into emotional quicks, and every movement you make to help them pulls you deeper into the past. And when you finally realize what's happening, you feel not only betrayed but ashamed that you allowed it again. This is the trap, and the only escape is awareness. You have to see that not every cry is a call for help. Sometimes it's bait. Sometimes the tears are not asking to be witnessed, but to be used as tools that bend your compassion into compliance. You must understand, love does not require you to be blind, and empathy does not mean abandoning yourself. True connection doesn't cost your sanity. It doesn't come with manipulation disguised as need, and it certainly doesn't demand you sacrifice your peace to fix someone who refuses to face themselves. That's not love, that's servitude wrapped in sentiment. There will come a time, if it hasn't already, when you'll be tested by this emotional trick. When everything in you will want to give them one more chance, not because you believe them, but because you remember who you were when you still hoped. But you are not that person anymore. You don't owe your future to the memory of who you used to be. You owe it to who you are becoming. Let the manipulation speak for itself. Let their sorrow remain theirs to hold. And when they try to place their pain in your hands, remember, you are not their caretaker. You are not their mirror. You are not their anchor. You are your own sanctuary now, and you have earned the right to protect it. There comes a moment in every person's journey, quiet, often solitary, where you no longer seek revenge, no longer crave validation, and no longer hope for understanding. It's the moment when your energy shifts from reacting to reclaiming, when you stop playing the game entirely, not because you lost, but because you finally realize the game itself was beneath you. This is detachment, and it is the one thing the narcissist cannot control, influence, or counterfeit. Detachment doesn't mean you don't feel, it doesn't mean you forget, it means you are no longer entangled. It means their words no longer dictate your mood. Their absence no longer defines your worth. Their approval no longer determines your peace. It is a quiet power, a stillness that comes from no longer needing anything from them, and it is the one truth the narcissist cannot handle. Because when you detach, you break the bond that fed their illusion of control. You no longer play the emotional puppet. You no longer dance when they pull the string. The narcissist survives on reaction. They provoke to get attention. They disappear to trigger fear. They flatter to reel you in. They insult to knock you off center. But when you no longer react, when you greet the storm with silence, when you meet their chaos with calm, they begin to unravel. They feel invisible, And for someone who's built their entire sense of self on being able to control how others feel, your indifference becomes their collapse. But let me be clear, detachment is not apathy, it's not coldness, it is clarity. You see them now, not through the lens of longing or nostalgia, but through the sober eyes of truth. You see the cycle, you see the manipulation, you see the lack of depth behind the performance, and in seeing it, you no longer participate in it. You stop explaining yourself, you stop trying to be understood, you stop trying to prove that you loved them enough, gave them enough, forgave them enough. Because you realize none of it would have ever been enough, not because you lacked anything, but because they lacked the capacity to receive it. When you detach, you reclaim your inner world, your thoughts are yours again, your energy returns. You no longer wake up wondering if today will be calm or chaotic, depending on their mood. You no longer walk on eggshells or replay conversations trying to make sense of what was never meant to make sense. The confusion fades, the fog lifts, you remember who you were before the distortion, and here's the truth, they will feel it. They may not say it, but they will sense the shift. The same way they once fed off your emotional responses, they will now feel starved by your stillness. And so they may try again, one more call, one more message, one more chance to re-enter your psyche. But this time, you don't need to respond, you've already answered with your silence. Your absence speaks louder than any closure conversation ever could. Detachment is the final door. It's not slammed shut with anger, it's gently closed with peace, and that peace is what haunts them. Because peace means they no longer live rent, free in your mind. They are no longer a god in your emotional universe. They are no longer the story you need to finish or the wound you need to reopen. They are simply no longer. But I want you to know, it takes time to get here. It takes heartbreak. It takes unraveling everything you thought love was. It takes grieving the fantasy, letting go of the hope that they would change, mourning the version of you who kept trying. It takes sitting in the quiet and feeling the weight of everything you gave, everything they took, and everything that was never returned. But from that grief, something new is born, not bitterness, not cynicism, but truth, and truth is the root of freedom. You begin to see that your healing was never about changing them, it was about returning to yourself. It was about no longer abandoning your intuition, no longer betraying your boundaries just to keep the peace, no longer shrinking so someone else could feel big. You stop making excuses for their behavior. You stop labeling abuse as love. You stop letting chaos feel like passion. And in doing so, you start to rebuild your identity, not around who hurt you, but around who you truly are when you're not surviving someone else's dysfunction. And when you reach that point, you begin to realize something profound. You don't hate them. You don't wish them harm. You just no longer carry the burden of trying to save them. You've returned to yourself, fully, quietly, powerfully, and they feel it, not because you tell them, but because your energy no longer bends toward them. Your life no longer orbits their drama. Your joy no longer requires their permission. That's when the dynamic is truly broken. Not when you leave physically, but when you leave emotionally, mentally, spiritually. When you let them go, not with rage, but with release. They tried every trick, anger, flattery, guilt, sorrow, and none of it worked, because you no longer live in the emotional landscape they once controlled. You've built a new home inside yourself, one made of truth, peace, and unshakable dignity, And that, in the end, is what they fear the most. Not that you left, but that you never looked back.